international group. So hello everyone, this is Dr. Alana James, and what's on your screen now is the last part of a long and extensive conversation that's been taking part over the last few days about what challenges have slowed down graduate process. We are using the answers to these questions to guide the conversation. So with that, I am having a slight hiccup in technology because there's supposed to be some slides here, so bear with me. Had them loaded last night. Here's where they are. Let's get them on. No. Okay. So I will jump back and forth. I think we'll try that. It worked so well when I was practicing. Which is a learning. PowerPoint should be opening. Big marker didn't like that at all. There we go. Sharing my screen, sharing, I think it's working. I tried the play. It wasn't working, Adrian, but again, apologies for this slowing us down a bit, but I think we'll be okay now. So what slows us down? Here's what I did with these answers. First off, let me talk a little bit about why a group. We have two different kinds of webinars that go on in our professional development. Some are groups and some are webinar topics. And the reason for groups is that, except for today, I think there should be less of the group facilitator and more of the chance for university grad students or graduate candidates to talk. Now, we're trying out this new tool to see whether or not that helps you have a better voice. But it is really how to bring together, the challenge is how to bring together an international experience online where people can be as engaged as possible, because research shows that engagement actually improves your results as a graduate student. So we had this idea of more discussion, less lecture, designed around topics that slow you down. So that's why we're starting with this. We will then have a series of groups that will actually focus deeply on the topics that we'll cover lightly today that came out of our WooClap conversation. And then you can always bring conversations at any given moment that is something you're up against to a group, and it'll be discussed. So who is this creature? He is one of the 10 slowest animals on Earth, and I thought he was just so cute he could become our mascot. So I went over the first 37 responses, and this is what we came up with. 6 were about challenges with advisors and supervisors. You can see personal difficulties, meaning children and time, personal habits, meaning habits about time, rather than not having enough. Procrastination, getting out of the house, that kind of thing. Educational issues, issues in class and on campus, the relevance of what was going on versus what you wanted to go on to your life, access issues, technology cost, your personal feelings, lost readjustments, direction, focus, and then wellness issues, anxiety, depression, etc. So I'm going to lightly touch on some very important, like the most important things that I know about, and give you some links for anybody who's dealing with these things right now. And then we're going to talk about digging into them deeper, and you'll be able to go back to wooclap.com to vote. And then with voting, you'll be able to, we'll set a timetable for now through January for where we'll have more meetings like this to really dig into some of these questions and to offer a lot of resources, which we can't do today. So I hope that is useful to you, and I think it's a good way to proceed. Our first discussion then is going over the responses in kind of a general way. So the first one, well, and feel free also to type to me in the chat box if there's anything going on in the webinar room I should know about, and you have other questions. And welcome to the people who are just joining us for this conversation. So group set number 1, challenges with advisors, supervisors, committees. 6 different questions on the WooClap as of last night were about these things. You can see what they said on the right-hand side. And I just think that there's a few things that might help guide this kind of frustration right away. The first is my personal belief and what we're seeing more and more in research. Graduate work was designed in a much different period of time, where what it took to be an expert was really a person carving out their own expertise. It was spreading out into the world. They were the top person, if you would. And so other people wanted to come learn from them. And so they had groups around them. And this was true in the arts. It was true in the academics, etc. The world's very different. We get our knowledge and our expertise from a wide range. Also, the difficulty of being a professor in a university, much harder because of, in a knowledge economy, professors are really under the gun. And they are not able to be everything that they should be. So they tend to fall into a few groups. Some professors are really good at their topic, not so good at leading someone through research, or not so good at helping a person understand the mechanics of academic writing and the getting things done, and perhaps not so good at being the human being you need them to be when you're anxious or upset. And then you can take that pile that I just laid out and you can resort it anyway. So some are really good at advising and not so good at the others, etc. You get what I'm saying. The bottom line then is that the responsibility has always been on the person learning to learn and solve their own challenges, but now even more so. When you have more offered to you, you have to chart your own course. And I'll just give a shout out for next Monday, 4:45. We're having a session like this on planning and on owning your own graduate experience, figuring out what it is you need and how you're going to get it. And we have some tools for that. that are really useful. So that's coming up, and it should be a good thing, and it should help with some of these things. Now, let's get to some specifics here, though. For the person who wrote that they were needing to start an experiment on a particular time, crucial in order for them to get everything done that they needed to get done, and it depended on someone who was not coming up to the mark. You need to drive this. You need to be able to say to that person, I'm getting a little frantic here. I have to get this done. I'm not hearing back from you. And you need to be conscious of the entire chain within your university. And I can't speak to your university because they're all a little different, but there are people in the graduate school who can speak to a professor for a student who's having a challenge without just to say, we've heard from one of your students, they're having a challenge. How can you help them? That kind of thing. There are mechanics within any organization that you can avail yourself of to put pressure in different places. It's tricky, and yes, there are political things, and every situation is different. So without knowing the specifics, I just suggest that you look for other places to get help. And that's one thing. And then another thing, which we'll talk about in more depth when we get into the whole session that we do on advisors, supervisors, and committees. The American Psychological Association has really good ethical guidelines for these relationships. And I personally recommend that you take a look and then have a conversation about those guidelines with the people you may be having challenges with. Perhaps if they can sign up for the bigger theoretical and conceptual part of the relationship, or the ethical part of the relationship, the two of you can have a different conversation about the ethics, not about your personal relationship. And then from then you can carry it into asking for assurances that when you turn something in, it'll be returned to you in a certain period of time, etc. So that loosely goes over this one. And Adrian is pointing out that the Map Your Thesis reference, which was shared last time, is now up in the oer.pd.education site. I sent a link to everyone who came to the last session, and if you're interested, I'll send the link for this one. But you can go to oer.pd.education and type in probably Map Your Thesis, and you should be able to find it. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. The second thing that we heard from people, did I go too far? No, I didn't. Personal difficulties, children, time, etc. There is no question that you have taken on a full-time job, and you might already have a full-time job as well as your family. And if it isn't true now, it's possible that during the time you're in graduate school, you will have another full-time experience hit your plate. It's the most common severe challenge that people face, and what it requires to be, but that said, there is no challenge that any of you face that other people haven't faced and been able to do well. So what we want to do then is look into, how do the people who do well do it? What did they have that we can start to put in place that will help us get past some of these challenges? And that's why I'll give another shout out for an upcoming webinar. We're doing one in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe. I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember exactly when it's on the calendar, on positive psychology tools. So keeping our heads in a positive workplace and being able to stay calm in the face of adversity requires that we know ourselves, and actually it also requires that we live in our bodies. So when your body starts to have your heart rate go up, not a good sign. Take a break. You won't think as well as you should. So learn how to manage, to experience stress in a way where it's a manageable outcome, indicator rather than an outcome. And that's one helpful thing that sort of overarches all of this. Time management requires that you know where your priorities are. So if you have a child that is sick and needs you, that's probably going to be a priority, or a parent that is sick and needs you. That's probably going to be a priority that overarches most things. However, during the time that you're in graduate school, you will have to make some choices, such as, do I go to all of my children's games? At what point do I not do this that I would like to do that is a good thing to do, and do this other thing, which I have as set as my own personal goal, to get my graduate work done? It's very hard, very reflective. There are no right and wrong answers. But if you see that your graduate work slips second, third, fourth, fifth on your priority list, then it's perhaps a good time to consider whether or not graduate work is right for you right now. Because if it needs to be, in order to get it done in a timely fashion, it needs to be in the top 2 or 3. And if you can't get there, then you need to look at whether you can negotiate it to get there. So who can fill in your 1s and 2s when you need it is a question to ask. To think of your life in a modular way. This is only a short period of time. Graduate school should only take a short period of time, 2-3 years, 4 maybe for a PhD, depending on it. But if you guide the ship well, you can be quite efficient. And we will dig into that much more, in much more detail at another one of these that you'll help decide when it happens. Just to point out the adjusting of number 3. We're early on in a semester. For some people who are listening to this, it might be you've just back in school or something. I don't know how long, when you hear this, you have been in your coursework, but adjustment takes time. Don't be hard on yourselves. If you're in your first month and a half and you're feeling like the whole world is ending and you can't get anything done and you can't picture out how things are, or if you just come back to it after a break or whatever, do give yourselves a period of time. But pull in, do a little professional development on tools, get yourself started, do the reflective work you need to do to feel solid and grounded in your own life. And then those things will help you take care of the rest. Thank you, Adrian, for putting up that link. So that's an overview of this topic. And as I said, you'll vote in just a little while on which ones. You'll have a chance to ask your own personal questions if nothing was covered. And then you'll also be able to vote on which ones of these are the most important to you, so that then we can schedule them accordingly. Personal habits, time, procrastination, getting out of your room to go study, which is interesting because some people study in your room. Time management on a personal, daily, minute-to-minute level rather than the big chunks kind of level. Procrastination. These topics, I'm going to speak for myself. You have to have good tools. You have to have good reminders. You also have the focus comes for me from the goal. So I have 7 years now in building a company that I believe will change the quality of graduate education for hundreds of thousands of people. I'm very passionately involved in this work. So I can sit down, and even when I don't want to write emails, or I don't want to schedule webinars, or I don't want to do the background work, the focus comes because the goal comes. So step number one, keep really focused on your goal, and then let that guide your moment to moment. Then the routine is important, and for some of us, it's really important. So I try not to look at my emails until late in the afternoon, because they just gobble time, and they gobble time in a way that doesn't get the real work done. And people who work with me know that that's about the time I get back to them. How do I make myself get out of my room? I set Pomodoro technique works really well for me. Again, it's about tools. So when I can't make myself get there, I set a timer. I use Kanban Flow, by the way, which maybe Adrian will put it up on the site for us. She was the one who brought it to us years ago. My whole company uses it, and we manage our time by putting up our work, assigning it to each other, even getting timesheets out of it. And when I'm having a day when I can't focus, we call it a Kanban day. I sit down and I do one thing. I put the timer on. When my 45 minutes are up, that's my time to get out of my chair and see what is happening. So mixture of tools, procrastination, general overarching quickie on this one. We procrastinate when we don't have short enough tools. So it's easy to procrastinate on doing dissertation work. I'll use that as an example, because you don't have a clear sense of what's next. You just know you need to be done in 3 years. We work better if we have short timetables, and then we know that by this time, the end of this week, I need to have read 3 pieces of literature. Much less likely you're going to procrastinate on reading then. And then also be aware of what you procrastinate with. Do you procrastinate with things that bring you joy? That like really relax you? So a little bit of that scattered through your day might actually help you have less anxiety. Not really procrastination as much as a tool you are using. Do you get involved, though, in a YouTube video, and the next thing you know, 3 hours have gone by because one led to another, led to another, led to another? Then you have to ask yourself, what are you escaping from? And procrastination used to escape. Maybe you need to do the hard work of looking at the big bad wolf that you're escaping from. Not capable of having them sorted out. We are much, much stronger than we think we are, especially if we take our lives in little doses. So, and the worst times we look back on, we made it through it, and we learned a lot from it. So those are just things to keep in our hearts when we think we're not capable. And then to have cheerleaders in your life who believes in you, who can you go to when you're feeling like you're not capable, to say, oh, and they can go, okay, let me remind you just how brilliant you are. And you know what? I just have to say it never goes away. 3 books, 2 chapters, huge career behind me, huge career still in front of me, and those days still happen. And people still have to remind me that I'm not built on sand. So yeah, it's the lives we live. And the thing I like best actually about doctoral work and master's work is that it's the lives we live, and we know we're living it. It's a place where we can talk about living these kind of lives. Okay, education issues, class and campus. You can see what the people wrote. I would like more feedback from instructors. I need help in writing and publishing. I didn't get the formal training. I need to do research. How do I find stuff? How do I get stuff done? Cultural differences, a little different. How I'm treated on campus is different from how other people are treated. I'm not as accepted. That's a personal level to this educational issue. And only discussions, not true learning. It's a grab bag. But what it is, what they all have in common is that a person who really wants something out of education is finding this to be a blockage. Now, some of the things, writing and publishing, formal training, you can take care of with your university.pd.education, or if you're at temu.doctoralnet.com website. You can sign in, and there are lots of things, webinars and training. If the person who wrote number 3 is in the room, formal training on how to do research, find sources, create experimental design. If you go to the search by phases tab on one of our university websites, you'll find a step-by-step how to get it done that will get you started, and then you'll be able to go to your supervisor, go to other people, and have it filled in with the specifics of your field and your university. The discussion and not true learning of number 5, I think Adrian might and I might be on the same portion of this. If you're not learning from discussion, there's a couple of things. One, a simple thing, is to have a note piece of paper with a line down the middle and to take notes on what people are saying, but then the other side of the line is how you're responding. So you can, because discussions are a way of learning about, it's a metacognitive way of learning about ourselves and how we react to this conversation. And then that can carry us through a ladder. It's called the ladder of inference. I think it was first designed by a man named Argyris. And we hear something, we think something, that takes us up the ladder of inference. Therefore, when the next person says something, we think something else. And we may not be taking in the totality. In fact, we're probably not taking in the totality of the discussion because of our own inference. So being able to get the most out of discussions is your first task. If you wrote number 5, do some work about your own learning, figure out what is working and not working. Now, the second piece, though, is about a learning style. Some of us are really judged to ourselves. I have learned if I have gotten something practical out of this. If I can take away a step-by-step process that will help me do the next thing. I'm a pragmatist. That is one of my goals from learning. And discussions don't necessarily get me there. So that's a good thing for me to take to whomever I am learning with and say, you know, I'm a pragmatist and I need this discussion to get to something practical. So what do we say? How do we get there? What do we do? I need to use my voice to get my needs met. To know my needs well enough to get them met. I'm going to come back to that with the cultural differences as well. We may be okay that we're completely different in culture. We may be all right being anonymous, or we may wish that our voice was heard. That's one part of a cultural difference. And that's the question of whether or not you speak up or not speak up. But perhaps we are feeling, or we see evidence of something that is an attitude that is being thrown against us because of the way we look. So it might be a racial difference. It might be being in a wheelchair. It might be all kinds of things. But people do make or have opinions that are totally based on nothing except some idea they have in their head based upon how we look. And those are the challenges that we have to deal with. When they become when they cause more than a slight emotional pang, then perhaps you need to think about how you speak up. And there are a number of ways, kinds of help you can look for on your university campus if this is appropriate. We're going to have a discussion, again, another shout out. Next Monday, 2 graduate deans are coming in. We're having a session focused on LGBT issues and that'll be the first of many groups that we have, group discussions that are led by deans about what happens on campuses and where you can get helps and resources. But whether or not you're an international student or a student who needs accessibility or a student who's coming from another country or you have another religious background or whatever, and you're feeling hostile, let alone things being said to you or actual people bumping into you or actually invading your physical space, those things need to be discussed on a campus level issue. And I would suggest that your dean of the dean of your graduate school is going to have resources for you if they don't actually help take care of it themselves. It's not you alone. It's you and a lot of other students, and colleges and universities are clamping down on this kind of behavior. So be the voice of putting up your hand and not standing for it. Writing and publishing, something we teach, so it's on the pd.education sites. And feedback, I'd like more feedback from instructors. Feedback is another one of those words that we don't know quite what it means, but I think it might be when you turn in a paper, you want more on the paper. I would say ask for 10 minutes, put the paper in their hand, say, I'd like more feedback than this. If you're in an online situation, ask for feedback, I guess is the first thing. If you don't get it, ask more specifically for what kind of feedback. Is it your writing you're concerned about? How did they find your writing? Is it the quality of your ideas? Are you concerned that don't have the critical analysis skills you might want to have? If you can pin it down, then it will help them give you what you want. And we'll have greater conversations about this too, depending on how you vote. Access issues. Personally, can't do things about this except we can talk about tools. But one student commented that they were annoyed that they had a duo authentication on their campus and they had to keep authenticating the same device. I have the same problem with SurveyMonkey. I always have to authenticate SurveyMonkey. It's terribly annoying. So go to the tech people on your campus and tell them that this is annoying. They are responsible for all the pieces that fit together, and they need to know that something is going on. Running a tech company myself, I don't know a bug until somebody tells us about a bug. So, see if you can get that authentication over and over issue taken care of. They may need to tell their suppliers. Access to eCampus, same thing. Someone is in charge of eCampus. You're having difficulty getting in. It's the biggest difficulty we have as well. Give them 24 hours. Don't get unhappy with them, but say this is a problem and keep at it, because enough people do that and they'll solve the problem. Cost, can't do anything about that because you're at the place you're at. But I can say, don't let it run you into the ground. Be aware of how much your graduate work is costing. Keep an eye on the marketplace you're entering. And if you're paying for it yourself, then watch it. Take time off. manage it, because we have seen some really desperate cases. Now, that said, I didn't do any of that. I ran up a very big bill, and slowly but surely I'm paying it off. It's not very costly money, and I would not have my degree. But it is, I think, certainly you have to finish. If you're running up a cost, you absolutely have to get the degree. Don't run up a big debt and then quit. So watch whether or not, when you get to the point where, oh, this is dangerous, so where do I really stand? Make those conscious choices. And again, I'll call out for next week when we talk about personalizing your graduate work. So a few people openly said, and actually more came up in the new ones that came in, that had a real feeling tone. And feeling is important because we're running into challenges with anxiety running rampant on campus. So shout out for the positive psychology session coming up. When we are anxious, we lose direction, focus. Then it's a downhill curve. And especially when you've been in the workplace and you're coming back to campus life, it's very, very different. And you may feel like, you know, all the things we say, a ship out of water, all those things. So just know that it's true. Look for people. Look for other people that have had that feeling. Talk to your graduate office and find out what support there might be there. There's mental health stuff going on your campuses. Absolutely. It's a big issue for them. So don't let it get to depression. Don't feel trapped by it. It is a symptom if caught early. It is a big hole if you stay in it too long. So take care of yourself. Oops. And then personal difficulties and depression. These are big traps. These are traps that you need support outside as well as onside of campus with. You need to be able to say, this is over my head. Not a bad thing, actually. We all run into it. And as I said, those things that are very, very difficult for us, when we get past them, have made us stronger. But one of the things we need to be able to do is to reach out. And these things require that you reach out so that you get from somebody else. So this will lead me then into some dates and some topics. And this goes back to WooClap. So now I have to do a something with my screen. Let me see how I'm going to do that, since we kind of messed with what you're seeing and how you're seeing. Okay, I think if I put this down, no, maybe. Apologies, it all should be in WooClap. There we go. Here we go. Coming up. And sort these topics, please. I'm starting it now. You can go to wooclap.com and you can sort the top 4 for you. Which ones do you think should be 1, 2, 3, and 4? And now there are 237 people in the room. This is wonderful. You are part of an experiment that has clearly been successful about whether graduate students can participate in online webinars. So again, go to wooclap.com/slow. I will leave it there. And you'll be able to just do that as work for the next probably, let's say, 5 minutes. And then it will lead us to, let me see if I can get my slides back. These are the 8 topics, and these are the dates that we have open. So your first 5 4, because September 30th is going to take the one that is planning. I already had planning in my calendar, so I will expand it to take care of the things that were said today. And then those 4 dates: November 28th, November 11th, November 25th, Latin November, all at 4:45, and December 16th. I can have groups at 4:45, and we can take these topics. So your votes will let us decide what goes in there, and then you'll go back to the Big Marker Conference / Doctoral Net Conference, and you'll see which ones, and you can sign up for them. And however you hear about this, hopefully you open our emails and you see what's available, and then you check it out and decide if it's good for you. Then you can sign up for the ones you want. Okay, so number 1, Adrian, I'll respond to, and people in the room, we're going to give everybody 5 minutes to do the vote. So people in the room, you can type in now comments from what I've said so far. And Adrian is commenting that, and I just want to say I may really have trouble with your name. Samanvaya, that's beautiful. If I'm saying your name correctly. A little red light just came on by your name, which might mean that you have a question or something. And if it does, you can type it in the chat box right below what Adrian said. Number 1 could also be about knowing when and how to use what tool for a certain task. Yeah, and we have some of our tools have changed so much that us keeping up with them is unlikely. I found that there's some things going on that are beautiful in Microsoft Word right now that have seriously helped my writing, that I will be doing a webinar on, but knowing how to use a tool is part of having a tool, and it takes its own time, doesn't it? So tools are a problem because first you have to figure them out. First you have to figure out which ones you might need, and then you have to learn about them, and that takes time away from your work. And those are part of the modular management issues that we'll discuss when we really get into timing. So you're right, it absolutely could be not knowing when or how to use the tool. Kate, you put up a number 1. So I don't know what that means. If you could explain it for me, that'd be good. And then we'll respond. And anybody else have any other comments? Hopefully in the background of this, we're going into, let's see, how did I do that before? Can I escape? Yes, I can just escape. Look at that. I don't know if they're getting resorted. It looks like 6 people or 6 might be the most frequent answers. I will download something from this, and it will it'll give me your data. And I don't know how the screen changes as a result of your data now, but I know that 6 of you have come and voted for this one. And I'll leave it open for the other 238 to maybe want to resort. If not, worst case scenario, you're going to get these topics because they were clearly the topics that the responses drove us to. And if there are any outliers that we aren't including in these 8 topics, I will email everyone who has signed up for this webinar so look for later missives. If you come to WooClap and you put something in and we don't feel that we have done a good job with it in the webinar, then we are committed to just sending on a later email to say, you know, this topic came up. We don't know if we covered it, and you might consider X, Y, or Z. Waiting on your end, the WooCup page says waiting on the next step. Adrian, I'm so glad you tell me these things, because I don't know what. When I go to WooClap, what does it say? Did you go on from the last one? Because this one should be no answers received. 6 people, but no answers. Oh no, this is the last one. So sort these topics. We have received answers. Don't know. We are running in towards the end. Anybody else, raise your hand. There's a hand next to the, in your chat box. Raise your hand if you had the same problem. Oh, did the ranking test. Oh, and submitted it. Oh, okay, great. No problem. The next, you're waiting for the next thing, which will be, we've gone over our 5 minutes, so I can do it now. In a word, what is your response to today's webinar? Were the topics helpful? Would you recommend it? Anything that comes up, you can type more than one word, but what will happen is it will build a word cloud for us. And then you can vote on the other words that other people submit if it's like you. And this will actually become a picture that we can use for your deans and other people to show the overall response. Well, interesting, excellent, good, helpful, good. And it's fun to see them come up like that, isn't it? Meanwhile, anybody have any other questions you want to put up in chat while people are voting on today's webinar? I'm happy to answer any of the things that may be bothering you now or slowing you down. If you're looking for particular resources that we have, I'll be happy to help you with that. And we'll give the word cloud another 5 minutes for you to build it as you want to. And you can vote. I think we should be able, I clicked the box. I know, maybe if we go here. Oh, here we go. So then you can, I don't know if we do it on our phones. Yeah, on our phones, you'll see the answers. And then you can click the boxes and say that you liked one or not. So that's how that works. Thank you for whomever put truthful. We stand for that. Looks like some voting's going on. Some things are getting bigger. Several helpfuls. Adaptive. That's a nice one too. 8 of you have done that. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Good to see. I have a question for all of you. If you're interested, please tell people where you're from. I have a suspicion that we have 3 or 4 continents here. Just because I know of the places we serve. And I think we have some people here from the Middle East. We have some people here from Africa, from the United States, from Ireland. So 4 different places. David, thank you. West Virginia. Excellent. Ghana. Kate, thank you very much. I always appreciate having people from Africa, any of the African countries come. We are hoping to be expanding to New Zealand soon, but whether or not they attend live or by recording will be interesting because they're quite a bit different in time from us. So those of you who have traveled or are coming at a particularly awkward time, thank you especially. Okay, I'm getting a feeling that perhaps we're wrapping up. If so, feel free to say goodbye and move on. If you have anything else to add, please do so. I'm here for another 10 minutes about, and I'm willing to carry on a conversation as you wish, but certainly I know everybody's a busy person and many of you are just starting your day. David, thank you very much, everybody. David will be back with us as a speaker in November, and we're looking forward to that. Hardly you. Good to see you, David. Good. Alexander, good. I'm happy for that. We hope to be a mix of the practical human things that you might need with the professional. How do you get this done? How do you write it? What does it take for your next job? All of those kind of things as well. So we look forward to seeing you again. And I think if nothing else, our groups help everybody understand that whatever you're feeling and thinking, you are not alone. Graduate work around the world has very similar effect on people. It is actually, Adrian, you and I are on the same track. We're just starting that with this next week. The confirmation emails will always have the WooClap links on them now that we know that we'll have them and we know now how we'll use them. And it became especially important for 4 sessions in October that are automated sessions, meaning there will be WooClap running, but the webinar itself will be either one I did just for that session, but I won't personally be here, or it'll be one that Maria has done in the past that was so widely received that we felt students needed to see it again. And so with our expanding options, it becomes important that those confirmation emails have ways to interact. And we are now committed that WooClap will be it for at least the next 6 months as we really push this tool, because clearly it worked. So thank you for your suggestions. You are always welcome to make suggestions, everybody. Your thoughts help us do a better job for everybody. And we're also hoping to have we're testing. We have to send emails at a time when people actually respond to them, but we're hoping to have emails go out for the university sites on Fridays, and then a reminder email like today, the day of, or the day before the webinars. Where's, how to catch the most people in the most parts of the world as well as possible is my biggest challenge. You're welcome, Annalene. Good to see you. So glad to see you doing so well. Great, Kate. Thank you. Sharon, you have a exclamation mark by your name, and I don't know what that means. I've never seen this exclamation mark before, but now you have it by, you're in twice and both have an exclamation mark. Any idea what that means? Oh, connection error. That's what it means. Do we have a group work session at some point? Or is this one of them? This is one of them. Anything at 4:45 is one of them. But the votes that you're coming up with now, Adrian, are the group work topics. So next week will be one. If it's scheduled at 4:45, I consider it a group. I will try to cut my talk back as much as possible to get it more like the groups we're used to. Although some of these topics are pretty big, so kind of a mismatch. Things that help slow us down has always been the secret to groups. And we'll turn on mics and be able to talk and all of those good things as well. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I think we've slowed to a stop. Raise your hand if you have anything else to say. Otherwise, if we don't have hands go up, I will end the webinar. Oh, please, throw it in. We always like good books. For those who haven't attended our groups before, we regularly talk about books too. See you next time, Annalene. I will. Have a great week. You do too. Adrian's typing in her book. We're all waiting. Writing Up Qualitative Research by Harry F. Wolcott. Excellent. Is that helping you sort out what? I'm just typing it in now. Oh, very good. Incorporating new features such as guidelines on how and where to use theory. Excellent. And it's a SAGE book. As a SAGE author, I always like SAGE books. Helpful. Yes. These are the things that we think groups is helpful. So thanks for that, Godfrey. Okay, everybody, unless a hand goes up, going once, going twice, going 3 times, we'll end this webinar. Once again, thanks so much for coming.